My name is Congresswoman Cammack. I am the co-chair. My name is Congresswoman Cammack. I am the co-chair of the Bipartisan Women's Caucus and proud representative to Florida's 3rd Congressional District, the Gator Nation, which also happens to be the home of the largest Jewish student body in the country. First, I want to thank everyone for taking time to be here today, to stop in the midst of madness that is occurring up here on Capitol Hill, not just to listen, but to share the stories that you hear today. That is, I believe, the most important thing that you all can do walking away from today's press conference. If you're watching online, please take a moment to share this video so that we can continue to get the word out and share the stories of these incredible, wonderful people. Second, I want to thank my colleagues for being here. It is a little bit chilly, and as a Floridian, I messed up by not bringing a jacket, but shout out to my Texas colleague, my Ohio colleague. We have fellow Floridian, North Carolina, Florida. Oh, hey, Debbie. The other Floridian prepared accordingly. I did not. But thank you to the wonderful women who are part of the Women's Caucus who do incredible work. Thank you so much. The importance of uniting as Americans, not as Republicans or Democrats, but as Americans, to bring the hostages home now cannot be overstated. And finally, I want to say that it is an incredible honor. Definitely, I wish it wasn't under these circumstances, but an honor to host Yarden and Aviva, who are here to share their stories today. So today we gather not just to amplify the voices and stories of those who have suffered unimaginable circumstances at the hands of Hamas terrorists. We are here to call for the immediate return of our loved ones, our friends, our fellow human beings who remain hostages in Gaza. The urgency of this situation is real, and we have to act now. We must bring them home. Today, 100 hostages remain in a Hamas captivity, under circumstances that you cannot even begin to imagine. 7 of those hostages are Americans. My anger, my rage at the idea that it has been over a year that families are still waiting. It is at a boiling point. Today with us is Aviva and Yarden. Aviva was taken hostage on October 7th and released as part of the first ceasefire negotiations. It was a moment of joy, but it was overshadowed by the pain of separation and uncertainty as her husband, Keith, an American, remains in Gaza. Keith, who grew up in North Carolina and have been married for over 30 years, right? 43 years, my apologies. Aviva shared her harrowing story with me last week. And through the tears, all I could keep thinking was, where does she find the strength? Where does she find the courage to keep going, to keep fighting? She's going to share her story today, but I must say that her courage reminds us that we must not rest until every hostage is safely home. The love and strength that she shows for Keith is a testament to the bonds that hold us together, and we must honor that by fighting today. And then we have Yarden. Her sister Rami attended the Nova Music Festival on October 7th, a day that began with celebration but quickly turned into a nightmare. Yarden has shared her pain and desperation as she waits for news about her sister, who was wounded during her kidnapping. The pictures that she shared with me of her sister shot and thrown into the back of a vehicle are etched permanently into my brain. Her sister is still being held hostage by Hamas terrorists. The anguish of not knowing is torment enough that no family should ever have to endure. Yarden's strength in the face of this unfathomable trauma is a reminder of the resilience of the many families who have been torn apart by this violence. Her fight for her sister is a fight for justice, for humanity, and for the right for every individual to return to their loved ones. In fact, she wears leopard print in honor of her sister. Now, I don't own a single thing in leopard print, I tried to order something off Amazon. It didn't get here in time, but I am proud and honored to wear a pin in leopard print in honor of her sister and the over 100 hostages that still remain. The stories of Aviva and Yarden reflect a shared truth. Every minute that we delay in bringing these hostages home is a minute too long. Time is of the essence. Each passing moment diminishes hope and exacerbates fear. We cannot allow politics, bureaucracy, or uncertainty to dictate the fate of our loved ones, and we must prioritize their safe return above all else. I hope this message makes it to those who have perpetrated these crimes and this violence against innocent people. President-elect Donald Trump has given you until January 20th to release all hostages. If you do not, and these are his words, all hell is going to break loose. Now, I know President-elect Donald Trump, and he does not make idle threats. So I would suggest that you take that very seriously. Release the hostages now. It is time for us to bring them home. With that, I would like to turn this over to Aviva, where she is going to speak about her husband, Keith. Aviva?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening to me. I was kidnapped with Keith from our house in our pajamas and taken to Gaza in such a brutal way. They pushed Keith, they broke his ribs, and they shot him. And that's how we arrived in Gaza, while all the people in Gaza were just standing and clapping their hands and happy. It was a holiday for them, while Keith and I were shaking, and all we wanted to do is to cry and get out of Gaza. We went through so many moments that I thought that we're going to die. And if there was a camera that could take a picture of what we looked like when we went through those things, the Hamas terrorists just stood and laughed at him. They made a joke out of him. I'll never forget that the Hamas terrorists telling us to sit in the middle of the night and just sit and wait while we wanted to lie down and smile because they were in charge of everything they wanted. They wanted to touch the girls, they touched the girls. And to watch the girls come out after they were touched and behave like nothing happened to them after that happened. I was so proud of them because I know that I would have wanted to run away and to see one of the girls being beaten up into pieces. And 2 minutes later, she had to smile to the Hamas terrorists as if nothing happened, even though we all just wanted to cry. But she had to pretend. We had to pretend all the time that everything's okay and everything is very easy for us. While they starved us and ate in front of us. They didn't give us any water. We weren't allowed to move many days. We just had to sit or lie down and keep quiet for days. Silence, completely and utterly silence. It's very crucial time now. We need to get them out. Winter is coming and we need them out before it will be too late. So I want to thank everybody, the whole world that's helping us, because I feel like so many good people in this world want the hostages out just like me. So I want to thank everybody from any country, any Jew, any Christian, any Buddhism that wants this world to be a better world, because I want to make this world to be a better world for everybody, and we need the hostages out now. Thank you.
Hi. First of all, I would like to thank the Bipartisan Women Caucus for arranging this such an important press conference and for everything that you're doing in the past 15 months, as individuals and as a group. Thank you. My name is Yarden, or more accurate, I'm Romi Gonen's sister. Romi is a ray of sunshine. She's a light in this very tough world, and she would do anything for others. She's more than ever was proud to be a woman in this world, to be a sister, to be a daughter, to be a friend. I was that as well. But for the past 439 days, it is very hard to be a woman in this world. It is extremely difficult to be a witness of what have happened on October 7th to the women, to the men, to see all the videos, all the footage that Hamas broadcast live, to bear witness to the stories of the released hostages about their sexual abuse. And after all this horror, to understand that there are still people that say it didn't happen. People that don't believe us. Women that don't believe us. Women that are saying, maybe we shouldn't believe all women. Open quote. He came towards me and shoved a gun at my forehead, Miss Susanna recalled during an 8-hour interview with the New York Times in mid-March. After hitting her and forcing her to remove her towel, the terrorist groped her, set her at the edge of the bath, and hit her again. He dragged her at gunpoint back to Child's bedroom, a room covered with images of cartoon characters, SpongeBob SquarePants, she recalled. Then, with his gun pointed at me, he forced me to commit a sexual act on him. End quote. There are 13 remaining female hostages that are still held by Hamas in captivity, including my little sister. And every minute, that or worse could happen to them. Romy was shot in her strong arm before she was kidnapped. And then she was abused by the terrorists, punching her with their weapon. She has major chronic diseases. She's not getting any medications, painkillers, nor food, only small glasses of salty seawater. They are not getting any shower. Just imagine to yourself to be with the same underwear for 439 days. I cannot stress how much I'm afraid for their condition, from what those terrorists can do to them, from what they are able to do to my little sister. How come there are women organizations that are still being silent? We have to believe all women. We owe that to them. We owe that to ourselves, to our children, to humanity. This is a bipartisan issue. And more important, this is a matter of saving human lives. This bipartisan Women Caucus has chosen to be on the right side of humanity, the side of human and women rights, the side of the free world that would not let terror groups to dictate the narrative, the side that will save lives. I'm here asking the entire world to unite with us for the immediate release of all 100 hostages. I want us all to unite for this important and urgent mission, because only with our light and unity we will overcome darkness. In conclusion, this year Hanukkah and Christmas are aligned at the same day, and it's not by mistake. I'm a woman of faith, and I feel this is the most special time of the year that we are waiting for the Hanukkah Christmas miracle to light the menorah candles with our loved ones next week. Thank you, God, and thank you all for doing everything that you can. Please join us and let it happen next week. Amen.
Thank you, Yarden, and thank you to my colleagues from the Bipartisan Women's Caucus for being here today, and thank you for all of you who are here with us. Last week, Congresswoman Cammack and I had the opportunity to sit with Yarden and Aviva as they shared their stories of their families, of their hopes, of their dreams, of their fear, of their concern. and the deep desire and need to bring our hostages back now. I appreciated the opportunity to sit with them, that they were willing to share so openly, so honestly, and with full emotion, unafraid to speak up for what was important. Yarden said to us, why don't they believe us? Why won't they believe us? And our only response, both Congresswoman Cammack and I, was, we believe you. We believe you. And as members of Congress, we get the opportunity to speak all the time. But really the stories of families are most important. And this is why we are here today, to give them the opportunity to share their stories, because they need to be heard and they need to be believed. It is simply that matter of fact. And so I am thankful that they again have found the strength to share and give us an illuminating glimpse into the horrendous conditions and the treatment that hostages are being held under. What we heard last week was disturbing. What you heard today was disturbing. And that is why we need to bring our hostages back now. I am praying for Rami and for Keith and all the hostages, the Israeli hostages and Americans who remain in captivity. Attacks on innocent civilians are heinous and they're never justified. And returning the remaining hostages and ending the conflict remains our top priority. I admire the strength of Yarden and Aviva for their determination and the resilience that they have demonstrated through their advocacy to bring not only their family members home, but others. And I do believe it is possible, but we cannot let people forget. Yarden talked about this season, and this is why it is really far more important to have them speak rather than us, because I was too going to bring up the holiday seasons converging. It is not by coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. And in this spirit, and in this season of joy and wonder, of hope, of faith, and renewed commitment to one another, let's renew our commitment to bringing back our hostages. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to turn the program over to the co-chair, vice co-chair, my good friend, Congresswoman Monica de la Cruz from Texas.
Thank you, and thank you for being here today and continuing to share your stories of your loved ones with the American community, with Americans, so that we can keep them in the top of our mind, not only today, but tomorrow, but each day that they have not come home. Your stories as a mother myself are so heartbreaking. I have a young daughter, and I think about your sister and the torment it must have on your family to think about her in these horrific situations. And it is unacceptable. Once again, we must stand with Israel, and we must bring these hostages home. It is completely unacceptable that it has been over a year that they have not come home. The U.S.-Israel relationship is one that is grounded in shared values and mutual respect and a commitment to democracy and security. And we stand with that commitment, and we will continue to stand with you and your families. This bond will only grow stronger despite the challenges that you all have faced and that we face here in Congress. The United States will stand with Israel in demanding the immediate release of these innocent hostages. I want to share with you that yesterday I spoke about the Abraham Accords and how important they are, that we continue to support the Abraham Accords. These accords are a reminder that we have a responsibility, and that responsibility is that we continue to stand for Israel through diplomacy, and cooperation. And as President Trump-elect said, and thank you, Congresswoman Cammack, for talking about the president's commitment to Israel and the hostages. We will put this front and center and continue to push for their release by January 20th. And what we know about President Trump is that when he says something, he stands by what he says. And I thank him for his commitment to Israel and the hostages. I also look forward to seeing the ambassador to Israel, Huckabee, to come into place and work with him for the hostages to be released as well. I ask on this day that the Lord be with these families, be with you today. Thank you for your courage and standing in front of the American people and sharing your difficult stories. God bless you for that. And I will turn that over to Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Congresswoman Cammack and Congresswoman Sykes, our Bipartisan Women's Caucus co-chairs, for bringing us all together as women who, and as moms in many cases, and as humans who cared deeply about not waiting to a specific date, but to make sure that we bring these hostages home as soon as possible. To Aviva and the entire Siegel family, and to Yarden and the Gonen family, we want desperately to bring Keith and Romy home as soon as possible. And your courage, and I know I've had an opportunity to meet with both of you so many times, your courage, we all would hope to have the kind of courage that you and your families have shown, and we need to bring them home so that you too can get the kind of rest and relief that you desperately need. These are just two of the far too many families who have been fighting to see their loved ones again. We want them to know that they are not alone. They have the rock-solid support of the bipartisan members who have stood together to demand freedom for the hostages and justice for their loved ones. We all wish that we had come to know these families under different circumstances. But the world cannot lose sight of our moral imperative to reunite these families and bring all of the hostages home. It is unconscionable that Hamas has for so long rejected a hostage deal, and that 100 hostages, dead and alive, still languish in Gaza. Instead, they cling to the innocents, doing unspeakable things, and all to use them as political leverage. Our message today to the American people is consistent and clear. Hamas must not succeed, and the hostages must come home. I'm proud that our leaders, President Biden and Vice President Harris, have stood by Israel's and these families' side, marshaling our leverage and helping bring over 100 hostages out. And that the policies of the Biden administration have made sure that the Middle East of today is certainly not the kind of triangle of evil that it was 439 days ago. And I am certainly hopeful that President-elect Trump will continue this mission, but that the hostages come home as soon as possible. It's a mission that unites many of us. It's impossible not to be shattered by the horrific attack on October 7th and how it has and still does impact these families and all Israelis and the Jewish people across the globe for the 439 days that we've been fighting. But there is always reason for hope. There is new optimism that an agreement could finally be close to arriving. With backing from the U.S., Israel, and our Arab partners, this agreement would see a phased ceasefire and the return of hostages, including Americans like Keith and Israelis like Romy and others. I fervently hope that the conditions are finally in place to see this through. Hamas has been weakened and Hezbollah has been defeated. Iran's network of terrorists, proxies, and puppets from Yahya Sinwar to Bashar al-Assad have disintegrated, in some cases quite literally. And the recent ceasefire in Lebanon and breakthrough progress in Saudi-Israeli normalization talks could help seal the deal. But until the terms of a deal are signed and implemented, we must continue to be vigilant and make this demand. All
Peace-loving nations must call on Hamas to lay down their arms and renounce their sworn commitment to destroy Israel and the killing of Jews. Hamas can end the suffering of Israelis and innocent Palestinians, just as they could end the heartbreak and suffering of these families that are here with us today. If they truly had any interest in peace, this could all be over. We must continue to pressure Hamas and its supporters to allow these families to be reunited. Until then, we will continue to join hands across the aisle to make a clear bipartisan call. Return our fellow Americans and all the hostages. Bring them home. Am Israel Chai. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to introduce my dear friend, our colleague from North Carolina, and I think the representative of Keith Siegel, Kathy Mann.
Good morning. I'm Congresswoman Kathy Manning. I am proud to represent North Carolina's 6th Congressional District. I'd like to start by thanking my colleagues, Congresswomen Cammack and Sykes, for organizing today's press conference, and I'd like to express my gratitude once again to the families of the hostages who continue to come to Washington to share their stories with us, to make sure that their family members are not forgotten. You inspire us all with your strength and your willingness to just keep coming here and talking about your family members. We all know that on October 7th, Hamas terrorists launched a brutal invasion of Israel. They killed over 1,200 innocent people. They raped, they mutilated, they caused extreme stress and humiliation to hundreds of people, and they took 240 hostages. 1 year later, thousands of families, indeed families around the world, continue to grieve over the loss of these wonderful people and for the families of those who remain hostage. And we continue to long for the return and the safety of all of the hostages, particularly the families of Romy Gonen and Keith Siegel from my home state of North Carolina. Every day I think about the hostages who are being held in Gaza, and every day I find myself sickened by thinking about what they must be going through. And I have to say, for Aviva in particular, having been there, you know all too well what your beloved Keith is going through, and it must make the agony even worse. Yarden, when I heard you talk about your sister, your younger sister, I have 2 younger sisters. I can only imagine how I would feel if they were going through what your dear sister Romy is going through. And she will be so proud when she returns to hear about everything you've done to try to get her safety. And Aviva, I have met with you so many times, I feel like you're a family member. And I cannot wait until the day we all get to welcome Keith back, because we think about him every day, all of us, here in Washington and in our state of North Carolina. These individuals, they deserve our continued attention. We cannot, when the media moves on to other issues, we need to continue to speak up for them and remember what they're going through so that the world does not forget about them. As Vice Ranking Member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, I have led continued calls for the immediate release of all the hostages held by Hamas. I'm here today to reaffirm these calls. We must stand together with our democratic ally Israel. We must continue to work until those hostages are freed by Hamas. And as my dear friend, Representative Wasserman Schultz said, this could all come to an end tomorrow if Hamas would release the hostages, and it would bring relief not only to all the people who are worried about the hostages, it would bring relief to the Palestinian people who are suffering under the heinous rule of Hamas and what they have brought upon their people with their terrible attack on Israel. I am encouraged by, as Representative Wasserman Schultz said, about recent reports of progress toward a ceasefire, toward release of the hostages. And indeed, within the past week, I had the opportunity to speak with President Biden, with Secretary Blinken, and with Special Negotiator Amos Hochstein, who I believe is over there now, continuing to negotiate for a hostage deal. Releasing the hostages is essential to paving a way for the end of the war in Gaza, for enabling the international community to support Gaza's reconstruction and foster the establishment of a real government in Gaza dedicated to its people's prosperity and peaceful coexistence with Israel. I'd just like to say I join all my colleagues in hoping that this release happens immediately. I'd like to thank the families for joining with us, for continuing to talk about your family members. I will continue to do everything I can to bring your loved ones home. Thank you.
Thank you again to Aviva and Yarden, as well as my colleagues for joining us here today. And thank you again for covering this. At this time, we'll be willing to take a few questions. And I also want to give an opportunity for any final comments or thoughts to Yarden or Aviva if they so choose. So with that, does anyone have any questions?
Ceasefire negotiation, how it's phased, could be the fact that a older hostage first phases. It's either Yarden or everyone of their loved ones being part of that initial phase. If they aren't in the first phase, how they would feel if it is a later phase.
Absolutely. If they want to speak to that, they absolutely can.
I'm keeping my hope that Keith and Romy and all the hostages will come home today, and we won't even think about anything less than that, because they all have to come home. I just want to remind everybody that the hostages are underneath the ground, trying to keep themselves alive and thinking, who is going to be the next one that's going to be raped or touched or starved or threatened or killed? Because Hirsch, the American hostage that came back 4 months ago, in the conditions that he came back in, are the worst conditions that any human being can come home in. I can't even think that Keith is going back. Keith is having the same experience, and Romy, because it breaks my heart. We're just waiting for them, and I can't even imagine all the mothers hugging their daughters and me hugging my Keith when he comes home. It'll be the happiest day in our lives, and we can't wait.
There is nothing to say after Aviva is speaking, right? She's so inspiring. And I just want to stress the fact that my sister was supposed to be released on the last November deal a year ago. She's a civilian, she's a woman, she was injured, she was shot on her arm, she had chronic diseases. She fits every category that was supposed to be released at last November. But we're dealing with monsters. And we don't know anything until they're home. We will fight like they're not. And we will do anything for all the hostages, all the 100. And we have to seize this opportunity so we won't miss it. We missed too many opportunities. And a lot of the hostages were murdered and killed during that time. We cannot allow that to happen. We have to start from somewhere just to see people coming back. It won't be possible to stop after you see one hug. I know it. I know it. And we know they're coming back home alive. You know, from October 7th morning, my family and I have said, Romy is alive and she's coming home alive. The only question is when. And we have to do it as soon as possible for every one of them. Thank you.
I don't think that there's anything that can top what they just said. With that, that concludes today's press conference. Thank you again for sharing their incredible stories of bravery and courage. And just to reiterate a consistent theme here, it is time to bring them home now. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you for everybody for being here, and have a good rest of the week.